whenever I look at our best community managers, it really is the teams who spend the time out there, bump into a resident in the elevator or help them carry up a package to their apartment home. Those are the teams that get the best reviews. They have a good reputation online. Like, spending that quality face-to-face time totally pays off.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to this episode of the Multifamily Mind. My name is Steve Wunsch, and I am your host. Joining us today, I'm so excited to have her with us. It's Janice Szymanski Dizuzio. She is the Vice President of Learning and Development at Brighton Real Estate Partners, and she boasts 18 years of combined management experience in hospitality and multifamily real estate. She's known for her high-end customer service and approachability, and she elevates resident experiences and cultivates positive workplace cultures through her people-first approach to the industry. I know when we were talking initially about, what would we want to discuss on this podcast, I know that one of the things that came out of your mouth first was, the customer experience. I know you've got a really great background both in multifamily as well as hospitality. And I wondered if we might parlay into some conversations around how are you seeing, or how are you helping to change and reinvent both the customer experience from a resident perspective? We'll start there. And then maybe we can also talk about what you guys are doing in terms of the employee experience, since that whole talent acquisition thing kind of falls underneath now as well.
Yeah, I think from a resident standpoint, we, as an industry, I think we're still recovering from the bruises of COVID. I think it's important that every company, not only the organization that I'm with, really assess what changed in that time period and learn from it, because good things happened and bad things happened.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think that's, if I look at where we are at today, that's played a really critical role in, what did we learn and what did we like from that time period? And what didn't go so well? What would we, if we could wipe it clean from the slate forever? But I think one of the things that we've seen a lot, whether it's related to, 2020 or whether it's just the environment of multifamily, is really shifting to a more hospitality-based customer service approach. And what do I mean by that? Well, There's this great tool that many hotel companies now have out there, and it's really about taking a pulse of your prospects, a pulse of your residents, more frequently than we normally, I think, as an industry have. And I think we've learned that because we weren't doing it right. And now we realize we really, truly, although it's been said 1,000 times before, we cannot just check in on our residents at the point of the lease process and the renewal process. Right. We really have to get involved with them and know their needs and their wants, and even their struggles throughout the entire life cycle. So that's an approach that we've been really diligent about and really trying to do well.
So have you implemented some new tools? Like, are you guys using Medallia or some of those hospitality functions that really get feedback from the customer?
So there's one specifically that we've looked at and we have not implemented yet. And I think we're still exploring the right tool to fit our needs at this time. And we want to lay that out correctly before we dive in. We all have the experience of a bad rollout, unfortunately. So we want to get it right. But I think, there's one tool specifically that I know I looked into that was called Kipsu. And they are trying to branch out and get into our industry a little bit more. They came from hospitality. They have almost the entire Hilton network as a customer of theirs. And if you go to a Hilton nowadays, you're getting a text message before you arrive. You're getting a text message when you arrive, 10 minutes after you slide your key into the door. And, that's the same experience. And I think it's worth replicating. So that's one tool that I know personally that I've looked into, and I really love the methodology behind what they're trying to do. So
I love that. I love the approach because, things changed because of COVID, but I think what hospitality really was able to embrace was, it wasn't just COVID. It's actually the way that customers want to be treated when they come in.
Right.
Like the last thing you want to do when you're on a, red eye flight and you get hotel at 2 a.m, you don't want to have to go to the front desk and wait for somebody, or, checking in on your phone. your key is in your phone, and all the communication is chat with the front desk. I mean, it's really revolutionizing that industry, and I think it's having probably a positive impact on their revenue as well.
I agree, and I think it's one of those things where if you don't do it right, the customer or the guest or the resident, whatever that face looks like, you'll feel that. You'll feel that you're not getting it right, and they will feel it. They'll think, gosh, I really don't feel cared for in the way that I used to be. But that's not the case. When I go to a Hilton now, and I'm born and bred Marriott, so it's funny that I'm calling out Hilton for this, but I just think it's something that they're doing right. Exactly. But
keep your friends close and your enemies closer, right?
Exactly. Just keep an eye on them, But I think it's one of those things. When I've checked into a Hilton recently, I still feel cared for, even though it's this digital experience and it's not necessarily a face-to-face conversation with someone at the desk. But I still feel like, okay, they are paying attention to me and they want to know what my experience is like the minute that I walk into my room or the next morning when I wake up. I think that's just important to evaluate each step along the journey. And it's so easily, we can look at it from that hospitality standpoint straight into multifamily and really assess that too. What are we doing to take care of our prospects the minute that they apply? And then a couple minutes later, maybe when they're a little confused about the application process, maybe we need to check in with them there. If we see that, it's taking them 30 or 40 minutes to fill out an application, what could we do better at that time frame and really learn from the feedback that we get? As an industry, I think, we've been behind the ball with technology. For so many years, we simply relied on a PMS system to do everything for us. Yep. Or we had to input it into the PMS, right? But now we're seeing that we can integrate all these great tools. And I love to see that that technology hopefully elevates and supports this customer experience.
I would agree 100%. And, being at Apartmentalize this year, just seeing the number of new prop tech companies that are on the market and all the different, I mean, I didn't get to spend a whole lot of time. I mean, you were on the trade show floor a little bit longer than I was, but so many different service options and ways to interact with customers than there was even 3 years ago.
Right. I agree. And even, sales mail, truly, and this isn't to say it that way, but the ability to send a message to someone with a video. And we weren't thinking that way 3, 4, 5 years ago. But again, I think COVID did good things and bad things for us. But this is one of those ones that I think just affords us the ability to have outreach with our residents and our prospects in a friendlier way and in a more efficient way than maybe we would have ever thought was possible.
Yep. Hi, folks. I wanted to take a quick 30-second break so that I could say, I hope you're enjoying today's episode, which couldn't be brought to you without being superpowered by Sales Mail. I mean, really, we couldn't produce this content without them. Sales Mail is the easiest and best tool for sending personalized video via email, text, and CRM. So, if you really are enjoying today's episode, it would mean a lot to me if you would visit salesmail.com so you can check out how our solutions might impact your business communications. And don't forget to follow us on LinkedIn as well. Okay, that's enough. Now back to the conversation. I was having a conversation with I can't remember who it was, but we were talking about this sense of community and what that really means for today's renter. And we're kind of in an antiquated perspective because we think community is they meet neighbors and they have friends that live at the building, and that in turn creates that stickiness, when in reality, what the generations that are renting now want is they want a relationship with the people in the office. They want to know who the team is. They want to interact with the team regularly. That's the kind of community that they're wanting. Have you sort of seen that happening with what's going on at Brighton as well?
Totally. It's funny. It always reminds me of if you go back to your favorite restaurant, you might go back to your favorite restaurant, but you also have your favorite waiter or waitress.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And that's what you could go there for the food, but you also might go there because you really just love the person who's been your waiter or waitress for 10 or 15 visits. And that's what I agree. We've always reflected back and said, well, they're going to, your residents, they're going to want to get to know each other only. we've always like thought of community as excluding us from the community. And that's not true. We really have to be community managers or whatever that title is. We have to be involved with them like a friendly neighbor as well.
Yep.
I totally agree. It's funny, as you were saying it, I was thinking the exact same thing in my head, because we really have. We've always relied on them making connections with each other and forgot that we should probably make the connection with them too.
And just, even just being proactive, not waiting for them to come to us, but being out on the property and engaging in conversation and, not doing the duck and when somebody comes by.
Facing the resident who you might not want to
waving with all 5 fingers.
No, I totally agree. I think whenever I look at our best community managers and our best asset directors and our leasing teams too, and our maintenance teams, anybody who's on site, it really is the teams who spend the time out there, bump into a resident in the elevator or help them carry up a package to their apartment home. Those are the teams that get the best reviews. They have a good reputation online. Like, spending that quality face-to-face time totally pays off. It's really just about getting back to that.
I love it. So let's kind of flip the switch then and talk about this same kind of idea and these same kind of principles as it comes to, talent acquisition, attracting the right talent, and then keeping them. Because that's a real struggle right now.
It is, absolutely. And I think from a talent acquisition standpoint, I think we got stale a little bit with what we wanted to do. Again, as an industry, right? This is something that I think we've all felt or experienced in one way or another was, I remember having conversations and being like, we just can't find maintenance people. That was like, I think where we felt the biggest strain, department-wise was really from a maintenance standpoint. And, we had to come up with something, whether it was offering them training in-house before they were even ready for their position, right? Like inheriting that expenditure to get them up and running so that they could come from a different industry. I think L&D plays a huge role in that. We have to come up with ways to not only attract talent, but keep them. Yep. And then I think, it's definitely about what we do once they are on our team. So part of, that strain comes from the outside as we're sourcing new talent. But then once they are with you, what are you doing to maintain their happiness? Have you spent any time with them? It's amazing. We just started some new chat groups, and we're trying to just outreach to specific team members because they use a platform within Brighton. And we really want to understand their experience with that platform and really dive into them. What are the best practices? Where are you seeing the strain? What's your favorite feature? And like asking questions besides how's it going? I want to know the ins and outs of how your experience with it is so that I can continue to make that experience better for the next new incoming team member. So, our talent acquisition teams right now, they obviously have to focus on the basics, getting us out there, learning the Brighton name and getting it out to the industry. But it also needs that clean handoff to L&D so that they can be trained and really introduced to other people within the organization too.
Yeah. So since talent acquisition now kind of falls under your umbrella, are you finding that there's maybe some antiquated processes or antiquated ways that we've been, because I'm just thinking like with the whole conversation that we had, I get a text, when I check in, I either get a text or I get a phone call. How's everything in your room? I'm thinking now with the employee experience, are you finding that there's some opportunities to do before they even have actually started with the company? The reason this is top of mind for me is because I've been seeing a lot of talk around this whole, 52% of your employees are currently looking for a job.
It's so crazy, right?
And people who have said yes to jobs, they're still continuing to look, even though they've accepted a role someplace. They might show up and work a couple of weeks and then they're gone. So, are you guys doing anything different in terms of that whole acquisition pipeline and that experience up to the actual first day when learning and development will step in and make sure they've got the tools and resources they need?
Sure. So I would say from the standpoint of technology, we haven't changed much or truly the process before they are with us, but we are I can explain this a little further. We are thinking of ways that we can make sure that by day one, everything is set up well for them.
Right.
So, as an example, we really think about, let's say you have a new assistant property manager, and a lot of times they are inheriting an email address from a previous assistant property manager, right? It's usually assistant at apartment.com, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're inheriting that. And let's say that person's been gone for a month, 6 weeks, right? Because hiring takes a little time. Well, now if you look in their inbox, it's an utter disaster. There's 1,500 unread emails. And all of a sudden, this new team member who joins you, they're going to have one of two experiences. They're going to sit down and they're going to see that inbox with 1,500 unread emails in it and go, whoa, I'm already behind the ball the minute that I started working here.
Right.
Or you can approach it, we consider it pre-boarding, basically. So before they actually physically onboard, what are we doing to set them up for success so that day one, they're hitting the ground running? So for me, we made really just a checklist of things that we felt like we should do to make that a happy and easy environment for that new incoming team member. So for me, if I was a property manager, I'd be sitting at that computer, dedicate 2 hours to it, clean up that inbox. So that way they're not inheriting a mess when they first
Right.
come in.
Yep.
And it's little things like that. The last time that their desk has been cleaned,
Yep.
maybe having a nice new notebook and a nice pen sitting there for them. Like those little details feel so much more welcoming than walking in and feeling almost like a burden as a new team member.
Right.
So
Yep.
that's where we really, I think, put our attention a lot is these simple little details that really just positively affect that new team member's experience on day one. And then really we've looked at, their experience from, I would say, day one through day 90, but even further, what does that first year look like?
Right.
We've also leaned a lot into, we're very proud of our onboarding program, truly. It's gone through some changes. It's had some facelifts, it's been through the plastic surgeon a couple of times, but it's a beautiful artwork now. And we tell everyone we combined our attendance form and our feedback form. So we sort of, make sure that everyone marks down their attendance and then we get their feedback. Like it's all required because we really want to hear that experience from every single person who has sat in that onboarding seat. I'm proud to say, if I pulled up the true data right now, we've never scored anything except for a 4 or a 5 in our categories. So I feel like we're on the right track, out of 5 stars.
Okay.
But I want to watch that. I never want to see if all of a sudden we start to dip, what's changing. I think reading into that data and just keeping an eye on it is just critical. We can't assume that just because it's set now that it'll be that way forever.
Right. Right. What I really love is just the mere fact that, people think about onboarding strategy and how to make somebody feel really welcome. And they're thinking, oh,
right.
we can't afford an employee swag box. We just don't have the budget for that. Well, that
right.
what you've talked about so far has a $0 effect other than somebody taking time to cull through the mailbox, to clean out their desk, to, how many times have you started a new job and you go and you sit in the computer and there's somebody's old crumbs in the keyboard? I mean, those little,
right.
What they say, the devil's in the details, right?
Exactly. And that's completely it. And those are the things that when I think of my experience, whether it was when I was in hospitality, what did that onboarding experience for me feel like? And what did I love about it? Maybe what did I not love about it? And then we've all had that experience of being thrown to the wolves day one at a new community or whatever role that might be. And sometimes that goes really well. Sometimes somebody just, becomes very successful that way. But then there is that other experience of someone who's like, that was horrendous. And after week one is already questioning, like, did I make the right choice? I don't want our people to ever feel that way. It's something I think we're just very highly cognizant of. And continue to strive for close to perfection there. Yeah.
And just the whole idea of hand-me-downs. I mean, it's going to be part of the equation just because, we're not going to buy new equipment and new uniforms and for
Right.
everybody all the time. And so
Right.
when you have that opportunity, make sure you've taken the time to attend to those details. And those hand-me-downs can feel brand new if they're clean and they're fresh and they're in good working order.
Right. Right.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
very
one of
cool.
the things that we sort of realized was, and again, as an industry, I think this was something historically that we saw a lot. Our maintenance team members did not have their own work assigned email address because, if you really think about it, how much are they going to be emailing, right? How much is, like, let's say a groundskeeper or grounds porter or a housekeeper going to be utilizing their work email? But it had such a negative effect on their experience from an onboarding standpoint. So spending the $7 per month to get them an email address that then helps them with communication between, human resources and talent acquisitions and the onboarding team. It's made that so much more streamlined than before. So that cost is, again, so minimal. It was critical to just the success there, because we felt, unfortunately, that otherwise our maintenance team members felt sort of eliminated from having that same experience. And it was, at one point it felt like it was out of our control. We're like, can we have their personal email addresses? Who likes to be bothered on their personal email address about work unless you're actually in the application process?
Right.
So for us, it was just one of those easy, like, we've got to do this. We absolutely just need to make sure that every team member at Brayton has an email address, because we want to communicate those things from the departments and reach them easily. They may not even respond back to us, but just to get the message out to them and have that feel welcoming was really important. Amazing how one little change can make such a dramatic difference.
Well, and you said, $7 a pop versus that position going vacant again, and
costing you way more.
Way more.
Exactly. Right. And that's just it's just money well spent, truly.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a great thing for people to really step back and take a look at. So, you don't have to be in the middle of a transition or a merger to revamp your process and to look at the details and to really spend some time on the things that will really matter on that first day for that new team member.
Yeah, we really thought about it a lot, and it's taken time. Like I said, our onboarding experience has really gone through a couple of little shifts and changes. And our president, John, has always said, he's like, we're going to keep revamping it until it's right. And that's okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with trying it this way. And if it works, we'll stay with that. But if it starts to not work, so then shifting and making a little adjustment, because as we know, regardless of it being our industry or not, the only constant is change itself.
Right.
So, yeah.
Got to be ready and willing to pivot when you need to, right?
Absolutely. And, from an onboarding standpoint, I think the lessons that we've seen there are, any energy and effort that we've put towards it, we've seen an incredible ROI, and so sometimes it does feel like, okay, are we gonna do this as a company? Are we gonna spend the money? Are we gonna put the team together who's gonna, send out the emails and the invites and be the ones who are teaching there? And of course, there has to be balance. That's what we've definitely learned from a couple lessons. Our first onboarding experience was almost 4 days long of, I think it was 4 or 5 hour teaching days. And by the end of the week, the entire L&D team was like a bunch of zombies, right? We were just utterly exhausted.
Not to mention your participants.
Yeah, right, exactly. And that's just it. Then that was definitely part of it, was, if that's how we're feeling, imagine how they are, sitting at a computer or whatever that might be like, as interactive, as fun as I think I am, and my team too. It definitely, we had to shift. We had to pull it back a little bit and say, where's the value here? Being there, on Teams is what we utilize. Or, can we record some of this and do this through our LMS? So finding a happy balance between those two, where the learner is still comfortable and they're still having a great experience. That's where people are going to have to play with it if they ever, if other companies listen to this and want to roll out an onboarding. That's my biggest takeaway is, you'll have to pivot a couple times to find that true balance.
You'll have to pivot, and you have to remember that people learn in chunks, and the chunks are not big. I
Right.
mean, I've always said the mind can only endure what the mind can only absorb what the butt can endure.
Our learners today are the TikTok generation.
Yeah,
So, if anything is longer than 20 seconds, you're going to lose them.
yeah,
And
yeah.
we are constantly trying to change up the stimulus, whether it's a picture or a video or a new person talking or asking a question. From an L&D standpoint, it's the only way you can keep them captivated.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, I feel like I'm relatively animated, so that does help in some instances. But actually, that in some ways is detrimental too. Some people don't appreciate that. So I feel like some of my colleagues sort of counteract my
Yeah.
personality in ways.
All about balance, right?
Exactly. And so, I've got team members who are calmer, but they still do a wonderful presentation or a lesson. And I think that helps us throughout the day, is that variety, so that the learner really does stick with it and absorb a lot of content too.
Yeah, love it. I love it. Well, I just love the whole concept of, looking outside our industry for best practices, looking for,
Right.
What's making other companies successful, always being in a mindset where you're not settling in and sitting back and staying relaxed. Right. That's all over. So it sounds like you guys are kind of just keeping things moving and reiterating when you need to and leveraging when you need to, providing balance when you need to. It's a great combination of what you've got going on there.
Right. And it's beyond the L&D scope. If we look at our organization, and again, we've gone through this major change, it's a slow and steady process. We've been very cognizant of that, and really tried, to not overwhelm people, our team members, because, like I said earlier, change truly is the only constant. And, but some of that we can control or we can delay. And as leaders, it's important to recognize that it's overwhelming when you're trying to do your job and then constantly relearn something new on the side, because you've got this new tech or you've got this new game plan or initiative. So being really diligent about what that experience is like on the other side is an important factor to the success of it overall.
That's awesome. Well, this has been a great conversation. And, I'll let our audience into a little secret. This isn't the first time that we've chatted.
No, you're right.
We had a technical glitch with our first conversation, and we are going to actually make that available to you guys as an audio only supplemental conversation. But in that conversation, Janice and I, talk a lot about the transition and the merger, and there's a lot of great nuggets in there as well. And I did ask you this question in that episode, so we'll see if you've got a new answer for us. But our thing here at the Multifamily Mind is we want to end all of our episodes asking the question of our guest. We use the word audacious here. We always want to be audacious. And that means, being extremely bold or daring, recklessly brave, fearless, like a audacious explorer, spelunking caves and climbing mountains. So now that you've had a little chance to think about things, what's one of your most audacious takes on multifamily at the moment?
Sure. So yes, if you all listen to our audio only session together, my answer then really was about renter as a service, but I will shift. I can come up with something on the fly now. I think, it is a hard one though. I really love that renter as a service one. That one was, where I think our industry is headed as a whole. Potentially.
That's a great teaser for everybody to tune in and listen to that one.
Yeah, there you go. Right. I think our industry is just ready for being more hospitable. And I know that leans back into a lot of what we've already talked about, but that really, I think it's one of those things where we haven't reached that point where we are a recognizable brand as an industry or as an organization. And I know other organizations feel that way too. And I think that's truly the thing that will make it audacious. We will be We have to be challenging that status quo constantly as an industry and saying this, even though we've been doing it this way forever, we're not being recognized. So what do we need to do? And I think at the core of that truly is customer service. Yep. We have to get better at that as an industry. After we spoke last time and you sort of hinted to, I think you said that Marcy and you got together, Marcy French, and talked about how fair housing has always felt like a barrier to the success of customer service. That for me has been, it's a sentence that has been in my brain for years of we've always felt like we can't get customer service right because fair housing tells us we have to treat everybody the same. And that's where we need to be audacious as an industry, is we have to figure out the ways to still provide equal housing, to, not have discriminatory practices, but we also just have to treat people well, plain and simple. Like, being audacious to me doesn't mean you have to come up with some extreme or creative or mind-blowing thing. Sometimes it just means like getting it right. And that's how, as an organization and an industry, we really have to focus on that, is like, how do we take care of our residents? Because that's the only way we will ever end up being memorable.
Right.
And people recognizing our brand is by the good experiences that then they'll reflect on, whether they're with us for a year or 10 years. They will look back in their lives and remember those great memories they had in our communities. So
love it.
I think just simple customer service is the most audacious thing we can do.
I love it. I think it's fabulous. The whole idea around being a brand. I mean, when you think about brands like Coca-Cola, you think about Nike, when you hear the word, the experience. And
Absolutely.
That's what it's the experience. So I love that you set that up as your audacious take. This has been a lot of fun. I hope you've had as much fun on our second conversation as you did on the first.
Well, I appreciate you having me more than once. So thank you so much for offering, and hopefully this won't be the last.
Yes, I hope so. It's been great having you here. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much.
This has been Steve Wunsch and Janice Szymanski Dizuzio. Did I get it right?
You got it.
On the Multifamily Mind. We'll see you next time. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Multifamily Mind podcast, brought to you by Sales Mail, the easiest way to send personalized video via email, text, and CRM. To learn more, go to salesmail.com. And remember, always be audacious. Until next time, I'm Steve Wunsch. Have a great week.